The brainstem, the engine that never stops. Right at the base of your brain, exactly where it connects to your spinal cord, sits the brainstem. Evolutionarily speaking, this is the oldest part of your brain, and it's also the most critical for keeping you alive. Think of it as the engine of an airplane that never ever shuts off. It controls your breathing and your heartbeat without you having to think about it even once. You are breathing right now thanks to it, even if you weren't paying attention. It keeps running when you sleep, when you pass out, and even under general anesthesia. And the stakes here are brutal. If this part stops, there are no symptoms and no warnings. You die instantly. But this engine has two incredible secrets that almost no one knows about. The area postrema. This tiny zone is one of the very few corners of your brain that lacks a blood-brain barrier. It is intentionally left unprotected because its job is to taste your blood. It samples your bloodstream 24/7 looking for toxins. If it detects a poison, it triggers vomiting to expel it. The next time you eat something bad and throw up, that's your brainstem saving your life. The substantia nigra. Located right nearby, this region is literally dark in color because it is loaded with a pigment called neuromelanin. In Parkinson's disease, the cells in this area die off, and the region loses its color. It turns pale. The brain literally fades. It is one of the very few diseases you can see with the naked eye and brain tissue. The cerebellum, the 80% secret. The brainstem keeps you alive, but it doesn't help you move with precision. For that, there is a structure hiding in the back, about the size of your fist, that holds a mind-blowing secret, the cerebellum. It sits at the back of your head, and it's easy to ignore because it accounts for barely 10% of the brain's total weight. But here comes the bombshell. That little 10% contains about 80% of all the neurons in your entire brain. Out of the roughly 86 billion neurons you have, about 69 billion are packed tightly into that little ball at the back. The vast majority of your brain cells aren't in the giant, wrinkly mass people imagine when they think of the brain. They are hiding in the corner. Its main job is to coordinate every single movement you make. Walking, writing, bringing food to your mouth, or touching your nose with your finger. It's a brutal amount of calculation done completely behind the scenes. That's why, when someone has too much to drink, this is the first thing to fail. They stumble and slur their words. You are watching an intoxicated cerebellum in real time. The amygdala, the alarm system. So, you are alive and you can move. But moving is useless if something doesn't tell you when to run away. Deep inside the brain is an almond-shaped structure that makes that decision in a split second. This is the amygdala. It's your danger alarm, your 24/7 security guard. It triggers fear and makes you jump before you even think when you see something that looks like a snake. But what would happen if that alarm was turned off forever? There was a woman, known in scientific literature as SM, who had both of her amygdalae destroyed by an extremely rare condition called Urbach-Wiethe disease. Snakes and horror movies did absolutely nothing to her. She was literally incapable of recognizing a fearful expression on another person's face. When taken to a haunted house, she just laughed and tried to pet the monsters. When a man threatened her with a knife in a park, she didn't even flinch. Fear simply did not exist in her life. But there was a twist. Scientists had her breathe air loaded with carbon dioxide, CO2, which creates a sensation of suffocation. For the first time in decades, SM panicked. This proved that you actually have a backup panic button that doesn't need the amygdala to function, one that is triggered internally by your own body rather than external threats. The hippocampus, the memory factory. Fear protects you in the moment, but to learn from danger so that today's scare doesn't kill you tomorrow, you need to remember it. Right next to the amygdala is a structure that records every memory you have, the hippocampus. Its name comes from the Greek word for seahorse, which is exactly what it looks like. This is your memory factory. Every new memory you want to keep has to pass through here first. To understand how vital this is, look at the most famous patient in neuroscience history, known as H.M. In 1953, to cure his severe seizures, doctors surgically removed the hippocampi from both sides of his brain. The seizures stopped, but the price was devastating. H.M. lost the ability to form new memories forever. He remembered his childhood and knew who he was, but from that day on, anything that happened to him faded in minutes. He would talk to a doctor for an hour. The doctor would leave the room and come right back, and H.M. would greet him as a complete stranger. Without this little seahorse, you aren't you. You are just the present moment, constantly erasing itself. The occipital lobe, seeing without eyes. Memory needs raw material, what you see, hear, and experience. And here is something unsettling. The part of your brain that lets you see can function without you even knowing it. Right at the back of your head, at the nape of your neck, is the occipital lobe. Believe it or not, your eyes don't actually see. Your eyes just capture light. The thing that actually sees and builds the image is this lobe in the back. When this area is destroyed, a person goes completely blind. However, scientists once set up a hallway full of obstacles and asked a patient with this type of blindness to walk down it. The man dodged every single obstacle without touching a single one, all while insisting he couldn't see a thing. This phenomenon is called blind sight. It means there are older, hidden pathways in your brain still processing what your eyes capture, even if your conscious mind is completely in the dark. The parietal lobe, the deformed monster. Your brain builds an image of the outside world, but it also builds an image of your own body. Moving up to the top of your skull is the parietal lobe, whose main job is processing touch. Scientists mapped out which part of this lobe corresponds to which part of your body. When they drew that map as a human figure, it created something called the cortical homunculus, a deformed creature with giant lips, massive hands, a huge tongue, but a tiny torso and ridiculously small legs. Why? Because your brain doesn't allocate space based on actual physical size, but on sensitivity. Your hands and lips have thousands of nerve endings, so they take up massive real estate. The temporal lobe and the insula, the birth of you. On the sides of your head, near your temples, is the temporal lobe. Here you process sound and language. But hidden deep in a fold of this area is one of the most fascinating structures of all, the insula. The insula lets you feel your body from the inside. When you notice your heartbeat, when something disgusts you, or when you get a gut feeling, that's the insula working. Many scientists believe this is exactly where your sense of self, the feeling of being someone, is born. In this area, there is a special, long, spindle-shaped neuron called a von Economo neuron. Most animals don't have them. They are found in humans, great apes, elephants, whales, and dolphins. These are the exact animals that can recognize themselves in a mirror, show empathy, and seem to know they exist. The frontal lobe, the seat of humanity. Everything culminates right behind your forehead in the frontal lobe. This is where your decision-making, your self-control, and your personality live. To understand how fragile this is, look at the case of Phineas Gage in 1848. He was working with explosives on a railroad when a detonation shot a 3-foot iron rod straight through his skull. Incredibly, Gage didn't die. He stood up and walked. But the Phineas that stood up wasn't the same man. The calm, responsible guy became rude, impulsive, and totally reckless. The iron rod had destroyed his frontal lobe, and it took his personality with it. Science realized that your self isn't a floating soul, it's a physical piece of meat behind your forehead. How your brain cleans itself. This massive biological machine would drown in its own trash if it weren't for what happens the exact second you fall asleep. Your brain generates a massive amount of metabolic waste, but it can't use the body's normal lymphatic system to clean it. In 2012, researchers discovered the glymphatic system. This network uses cerebrospinal fluid to wash away toxic waste, including proteins linked to Alzheimer's disease. Crucially, this only happens during deep sleep. When you sleep, your brain cells literally shrink, creating gaps for the fluid to rush in and wash the garbage out. Sleep isn't just passive rest, it is an active power wash. If you aren't sleeping well, you are literally letting trash pile up inside your head. Fun fact, your brain weighs about 3 pounds, but because it floats in this fluid, its effective weight is only about 50 grams, keeping it from crushing itself under its own weight. The second brain. Here is the final twist. Your brain isn't the only one giving orders. There is a massive nerve called the vagus nerve connecting your brain to your gut. Most people assume the brain barks orders at the stomach, but it's actually the opposite. Roughly 80% of the signals travel from the gut up to the brain. Your belly talks to your head way more than your head talks to your belly. When you say you have a gut feeling, it's not a metaphor. It's your second brain sending a literal message to your first one. So, this is you. An engine that never stops. A little ball holding 80% of your neurons. A fear alarm with a hidden backup. A memory factory. And a piece of meat behind your forehead that dictates exactly who you are. All of it floating in fluid, power washing itself every night while you sleep. If you learned even one new thing today, drop a like on this video. It helps me out so much to keep making these for you. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments which part blew your mind the most. I'll see you in the next one.